But emotional leadership, our topic for today, and let's see if, yes, uh, briefly about me. Okay, now we're skipping a little bit. I work as an Auntie professional at Auntie, so I will do client work, mostly with leaders, managers, do some executive coaching, teamwork, kind of the issues that I work with, also recovery, stress management. My background is in business and sport and exercise psychology. And my presentation today is divided into 3 parts. So first, we're looking at emotions at the workplace. So kind of what happens at the workplace, how emotions affect our work. Then we'll go briefly into how to lead emotions. And at this point, we will have a brief exercise for you to do, kind of a mental imagery exercise. So kind of be prepared for um, that type of exercise today for you, wherever you're at, kind of how you want to delve into that. That's of course up to you. And then the third part, kind of you or me as an emotional leader. So how can we develop these competencies and what to kind of do next, where to go next? And here maybe you also have some comments that you want to share in the chat section. But let's start off with kind of looking at emotional atmosphere and how it affects work. So here we have a quote from a book, kind of emotional atmosphere explains as much as 71% of a team's success or team's effectivity. And one of this book authors, Jarkko Rantanen, is kind of an expert how to utilize information about emotions in working life. So I really recommend if you want to read his books. So there's kind of a reference list at the end as well. Most of them are in Finnish, some of them are also translated into English. But kind of just to understand this topic a little bit, just a few examples from Auntie client work, kind of how emotions affect the way we do work. And now when we're looking at emotional leadership, if it's of course good to remember that kind of the emotions of an authority figure affect the atmosphere even more than others at the workplace. But let's think about a few examples from Auntie client work, from us professionals. So we can think about, for instance, a situation where an employee is having a hard time in their personal life. So something has happened that is kind of preventing them to maybe perform at their usual level. And then at work, if they are in a way heard and listened to, maybe the manager is a really good emotional leader and is kind of taking that into account, kind of conveying the message that everything's okay, there is no need for you to worry about work at this moment, in a similar way that we are probably used to, that the employee feels that they are kind of, their life situation is respected and they are listened to, and maybe the manager is conveying a message of flexibility, that it's okay at this moment. And it doesn't mean that the manager acts as a psychologist or a therapist or pries into any personal details more than is necessary, but kind of just conveys the message that this situation is okay, and the work kind of gives flexibility when something is happening in our personal lives, because of course we are not machines. We are affected by things happening at work and then happening in one's personal life. And then this in turn leads to maybe greater employee commitment, appreciation of the workplace and the community because of the support that was given in this personal circumstance. And another example that we can maybe think about is maybe about work that contains some parts for the employee that are a little bit dull or unappealing. There may be some parts of the work that are not so nice, and kind of maybe the atmosphere doing those tasks emotionally for the employee is not the best. But then at work, they have a wonderful community of people who are very humorous. They're having fun at their coffee break or lunch break, laughing about stuff, and they have this very kind of communal spirit. So that then may offset a lot of the dullness of the tasks that the person is experiencing. And then they can manage that workload better, and that kind of adds to their mental well-being. So that's another example of how emotions can affect how we do our work. And then maybe a third example here as well. So many times in client work, I hear a story from a client that they feel that the manager is not really appreciating their work or not giving them enough feedback, and they feel kind of isolated and alone in their work. So they kind of feel that they're not seen, their work is kind of redundant, nobody really seems to care. And that kind of the only thanks that the employee is getting is even more responsibility, even more work for their already kind of overloaded schedule. When this happens, the employee, of course, may feel stressed and overloaded and kind of feel this lack of commitment to the workplace, feel that they're not heard or seen, that their well-being is not a priority for anybody. And then, of course, what happens is that the employee probably starts looking for other opportunities elsewhere. And of course, um, this type of chain of events can be dangerous for the organization. Then that there is kind of high staff turnover happening because kind of these emotions are not dealt with or people don't feel appreciated. So many kind of very concrete examples how emotions affect how we do our work. Then let's go to our first part of emotions at work. So what type of emotions do we feel? So here we just have an example list. Of course, it's no way an exhaustive list, just kind of few different types of emotions that we can have at work. We can have joy, as I was just describing in the example, indifference. We can have maybe jealousy. Somebody is getting a promotion that I should be getting, for instance. Or then we can have maybe joy for the person that our colleague is maybe getting a project that they have always wanted. So we can feel kind of delight and excitement for the other person or for us, for ourselves, of course, as well in different situations. But here, kind of the message is that people experience a wide spectrum of emotions at work and during their working days. And of course, not only work triggers these emotions, but our private lives and what is happening in our personal lives as well. And we are kind of whole people, and feelings cannot be cut out from work. Whatever feelings we had in the morning at home, and then we cannot just turn them off when we come to work. And there is very kind of interesting research about how emotions affect our cognitive decision-making processes, and kind of emotions and rational thinking are not two different things. So we need emotions to do rational decision making, and that's kind of a very interesting topic. So we don't have to divide the two in any way. So kind of purposeful decision making requires emotions to have a play as well. And many emotions at work kind of add to these feelings of achievement. And then, of course, it's good to remember that even those very difficult, let's say, negative feelings, they also can reveal something important about the way we do the work and maybe kind of reveal some things that could be done better. So they act as a driver for change. So in that way, we shouldn't fear those negative emotions or kind of try to push them under the rug in any way, because they can act as very powerful reminders of things that could be done maybe better or could be improved. And here in this list as well, and I'm going to use this division here as well of negative and positive emotions. And usually we talk about in this way, although it's a bit misleading. All feelings are important and should be listened to, and they have a signal or a message behind them, whether they're kind of positive or negative. But kind of they're both necessary. And it's good to remember that emotions are real to the person who is experiencing them. But of course, on the other hand, they can also arise kind of from a false foundation. So we can, for instance, see a stick in the woods and think that it's a snake. And then we are there for a moment and breathe and notice actually nothing happened. It wasn't anything dangerous. but the emotion that arises is still real fear and real kind of running away from that stick or snake. But of course, it can signal anxiety. It can kind of have many different meanings. Let's say anxiety at work, it can signal many different things. It can signal that there is a poor management culture, something has been happening, there is no psychological safety, or it can signal that the person has been experiencing lack of sleep or personal issues, or they had a Netflix marathon the night before, so they're not very well rested or recovered, and anxiety is kind of uh, coming up from there, or they're making kind of false interpretations of how other people are because they're tired. So there are many things that are resulting in low mood at the workplace. Or then kind of also cognitive things that you're not able to take care of your cognitive well-being, so to speak. So kind of there are notifications, disturbances, a lot of noise everywhere, or emails, or kind of self-leadership skills are poor, and that can also cause anxiety. But maybe the kind of main message here is that a certain feeling doesn't directly convey a message of kind of, or point to consequences in the style of kind of, I feel bad here, so I shouldn't be doing this job, or I shouldn't be doing this task, or I don't want this to be a part of my work. Well, here we have kind of from Barbara Fredrickson, who is a psychology professor, kind of her broaden and build principle and kind of few lessons from that. When we feel positive emotions, and this doesn't mean a euphoria type positive emotions, just kind of this mildly positive atmosphere at work. So this is also very important to remember, that positive emotions don't mean that they are forced or only positivity is allowed in some way, but just kind of overall a mildly more positive atmosphere usually sets people up for success. So it's easier to be open and vulnerable, share maybe even those difficult things. We are able to observe better kind of what is happening when we are not feeling threatened all the time. So then our kind of field of vision gets very narrow if we are kind of feeling fear or feeling threat all the time. So it's easier to see the big picture and kind of plan ahead, to see the future and build a vision ahead. And then kind of this sense of community, connectivity to others increases. And it's kind of easier to negotiate, find those win-win solutions. And of course, it also increases creativity. And Barbara Fredrickson kind of has this idea that positive emotions have a different meaning in evolution than negative ones. So the negative ones are protective in many ways, and the positive ones, in a way, act like this kind of building, broaden and build type of principle is behind them. So it's easier to do all of these things mentioned here. And there are, of course, many studies that are very interesting in how kind of when we are looking at, let's say, comedy bits, before, let's say there's this research setting that people are trying to solve a problem. Some people are looking at comedy bits and other people are looking at maybe something more negative or more neutral. And from these studies, there is a very clear result that people who are looking at comedy bits perform better at these problem solving tasks, just because of the mood is more positive and maybe open to creativity in some way more. Well, here it's good to remember, and of course, many of you probably know this already, that feelings are contagious. We are herd animals and we kind of feel what other people are feeling. So if somebody is feeling anxious or sad or happy, some part of that feeling we also internalize. And maybe some people are even more kind of sensitive to other people's energies and feelings than some others are, and that's also good to keep in mind. But kind of we strongly absorb the atmosphere at the workplace. And of course, as I said already before, we even more absorb the atmosphere of leadership and authority figures. They have kind of an accentuated power to set the emotional tone at the workplace. And this is good to keep in mind. And we have kind of a quote of a Finnish philosopher, Esa Saarinen, who always says that what arrives when you arrive. So meaning that what arrives into a space or into the workplace when you arrive. So what type of baggage are you carrying around, or what type of an emotional atmosphere, kind of this cloud of emotions, do you have when you come into the room? So it's just very important to be mindful of that and kind of notice your own emotions when maybe coming into a meeting or to a room full of people, and maybe also noticing that when you come into a room, what are you absorbing from the room? And this is something that we many times talk about with my clients as well, is that whose feelings am I feeling at the moment? So are there my feelings, or if I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling somehow irritated and I wasn't this before, so what is happening kind of around me? And for a leader, for sure, this is a very important skill to kind of learn to recognize the emotional atmosphere of yourself and then people in the room, because that can be a very important message for a manager and for a leader, that if you are feeling anxious, maybe the team is also feeling anxious, and maybe this is something that needs to be addressed in some way. Well, then emotional leadership, and looking at kind of how to add positive emotion to a work community, and just kind of how to create this slightly positive atmosphere that then feeds creativity and feeds the sense of community and all the things we were looking at before. So, of course, very basic things as adequate resources, taking care of people's well being, making sure that people's roles and goals are always in check so people know what tasks belong to their role and what don't, and that there is a clear communication of expectations as well. That there are suitable working methods. So this is also something important, and that there is an ongoing discussion about these things as well. And then just taking care of kind of basic psychological needs. So intrinsic motivation, we know that autonomy, competence, affiliation are very important to feel that flow at work, to feel well at work. So just to make sure that people have autonomy, so control of how they do their work and how they develop their professionality in the future. They have physical and mental competencies to do their work. So it's challenging enough, but not too challenging or not too boring, that they're challenged in a right way. And this, of course, requires knowledge of the individual, discussion with them, that they also, of course, tell you that this is either enough or too much or too little. And affiliation here as a psychological basic need just means that feeling appreciated, getting feedback, belonging to a community, and how to do that in a way that everybody feels like they belong, differences are respected, and that people just have trust with each other within an organization. And then now that we are talking about positive emotions at work, it's also important to make a note about difficult things and feelings, that kind of this psychological safety means it's also free to share. People are free to share difficult things and feelings as well. Not only always positive success stories, but also kind of that I don't feel good about this, or this maybe we should be looking at in more detail. And just because authority figures kind of exert this emotional power within an organization, so then having positive kind of verbal and non-verbal communication from leadership. So how you are. And here kind of sometimes it's said that, you lead by example, not only in those situations where you're a leader, but also when you're having coffee or having lunch. So kind of all the time you're exerting some sort of emotional power, so to speak, to the organization. And then, of course, lastly, these positive moments as well. So in a way, having these informal get-togethers, maybe celebrating successes. How do we do that within a team? Do we have team coffee and donut days or pizza days? So those can be important as well, but they are not maybe at the top of a list of priorities. But kind of building that community spirit that way, of course, creates trust within people, that there is some humor and laughter together as well. And then kind of here, I think it would be a good time for a little exercise, as I promised before. And this is an kind of a mental imagery exercise for you personally. Maybe you're a leader, maybe not, but it doesn't matter. Just kind of thinking about what type of positive or what type of emotional environment you create. And let's start the exercise by you finding a nice position for yourself in the chair or a sofa. Or if you're taking a walk, you can just kind of concentrate on hearing the words that I'm saying and try to find a relaxed position. If it's natural for you to close your eyes, you can do that at this point and just take a few deep breaths. And if you want to close your eyes, it can make it easier for you to read some of the mental images in this exercise. And just for a moment, kind of acknowledge what is going on within your body and mind at this point. Then, with the exhalation, kind of blow away everything that is not in this present moment. Get rid of everything that is not here and now. And take a few breaths still. Now I invite you to travel in your mind's eye for a moment to a good mood regarding your own leadership. Some kind of everyday situation from the past where you acted successfully. Think for a moment about the positive feelings you felt about it. Did you, example, experience pride or gratitude or togetherness? Feel free to search these images of this happy moment as a leader in your mind for a few breaths. Then you can think about a moment when what you are already doing to increase positivity in your work community. Do you have your own nice way of cheering other people on, or how do you uh, kind of see success, or how do you build nice moments within your own work community? What else could you do a little differently or increase positivity and add to positive energy? I'll give you a few breaths still to think about what are you doing currently to add to positive environment at your workplace. Good. Take a final breath, kind of come slowly back to the moment here, and let's kind of bridge the gap now of kind of how to deal with negative energy at work. You have been thinking about, and hopefully are thinking about after the webinar as well, of how you add to this positive environment. And let's see next kind of how to decrease negative emotions. So it's good to think about, as I said before, not to shy away from negative emotions because they can have a powerful signal about improvement. But it's good to have kind of a procedure of how to handle conflict at the workplace. And it's good to have assertiveness when dealing with this situations and dealing them in a timely manner. So sometimes in organizations, at least in my work, I see that people are also almost too understanding or tolerate for too long that somebody is, for instance, behaving badly. And then, of course, that in other people within a team or organization understandably makes them upset that this is tolerated for too long. So rather swiftly take these matters into your hands and then think about if group or individual support is needed. And of course, for a leader, if you have a sparring partner, a mentor, maybe an auntie professional that you can talk about these things with on how to deal with these conflict situations, or then when to turn to our HR partner or have some mediation within the workplace, which is also a very powerful tool. And there is a neutral party to the conflict handling the situation there as well. And then our third part, as kind of you as a leader of emotions. And here I invite you to think about kind of to wrap up our webinar today. You're probably aware of a lot of it and can be blind to some things of how you emotionally lead. And working life professor Helena Ooman has commented that you also lead when you kind of go to the bathroom or go to the lunch to eat. So there you express emotions in many situations that you're not probably aware of. And for a leader, it's good to think about how to learn to express your own emotional states. How do you recognize what feelings you are feeling? Kind of increasing self-awareness that way. So that then helps you assess the emotional atmosphere around you, increases empathy to other people, and also helps you motivate other people when you're able to choose an emotional leadership style according to the individual and their personality and their emotional states. But that then requires that you know your own emotions and your own emotional state. So kind of uh, it requires work from your part in your self-development and kind of staying awake for opportunities to take trainings, take education, maybe talk to an auntie professional, take some coaching in the matter, or kind of just staying awake for the fact that this is an important matter in leadership and that it's a trait that you maybe want to develop a little bit. And another thing is staying open for feedback, maybe even asking questions of how did you feel when we did this, or how kind of did this thing um, go? So kind of not shying away from feedback. And then the last message, maybe also showing vulnerability at work as a leader. So also showing your feelings somehow or your mistakes that I don't know how this could be handled. So kind of showing that you're not all knowing is also very important when being a kind of emotional leader. And being mindful of the time, just leave you with this quote of book by Pessi Martela and Paakkanen. So in the workplace, emotions can have an effect, especially in the following 5 factors that generate results and well-being. So learning, creativity, decision-making, cooperation, health, and meaningfulness. So very big impact on very important factors to our well-being. But now thank you for listening and very happy to hear if you have the time for questions, comments, ideas about the webinar or any experiences you want to share.
Thank you, Hanna-Kaisa. Truly interesting topic once again. Uh, being mindful of the time, I picked one question here, so a very practical approach for this one. So if you notice a team member experiencing some kind of burden or them feeling that they've been wronged heavily, nothing illegal happened at this point, but they are clearly stressed out and they truly feel that they have been obsessively wronged by something,
Mm.
how would you approach this kind of situation?
That's a very good question. And if you're a team member, so you're not the manager of the team, so then of course uh, there are two things here that I would start to think about. Is of course then maybe encouraging the person to go talk to the manager. Of course, that is there. If this something like this has happened, it's very important that they talk to the manager or HR. Maybe there are ways there that this could be handled in some way. But then, as a colleague, as a team member, um, listening, actively listening, validating, normalizing these feelings. Um, not too much offering solutions or trying to push this person if they don't ask for specific advice. So kind of being there, asking how they are, um, if this is an ongoing situation and not a one-time thing. So from a colleague standpoint, kind of supporting, validating, being there, but also trying to direct it to proper pathways within the organization. So that's a very good question and something that we think about many times with clients as well at Auntie.
Cool. Thank you for this. So, and being mindful of the time, we need to stop at this point and really respect others' calendars also. So thank you, Hanna-Kaisa, for this one, and for everyone who is online. You will be receiving a recording of this, of course, afterwards once again, and we will see you with our next Auntie webinar in June. So hey, have a great day, everyone. Thank you for listening, and bye.
Thank you.